Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Programming with a Purpose. This is a part 2 in the Duolingo app development series. So these are some of the screens, 4 onboarding screens that we are going to cover inside this tutorial. These are 4 questions and their answers will be sent to the server in normal apps, but we are not going to save these screens. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And let's move to the next part 2 of this tutorial series. So here we have created a folder with the name of models and we are adding a file to it which is of the name question. So this file is going to be a struct which will contain some of the variables I'm going to show you here. And then I'm going to show you how we are going to use it to build our questionnaire view. So this is a struct. We have an ID which is unique, and then we have a query of type string, and then we have an answer image for each of the query, which is basically, if you can replace answer with option, that will be more appropriate because we have options for each of the queries. So we have multiple images, multiple text, and multiple subtexts. I'm going to show you in a while what each of this mean inside a screen by showing you the actual screen. So these are the 3 entries for each of the question: image, text, and subtext. Next, I'm going to create a Swift file which is of the name data. I'm going to add it to utils. This is basically the static data that I'm going to add here. In normal apps, all of this data is usually present on the server. If you have a lot of questions and the questions can be dynamic, then you need to add those questions inside the server and you fetch all of those questions at the start of the app. But since I'm creating an offline app which has all of its data inside the user device, no server is being used. So I'm creating all of the static questions here. So this is the way we are going to add a question by adding an initializer to the struct question. So here I am showing you how to add a simple question, which is the first one. And then I'm going to paste all of the rest of the questions here. You can pause the video here and copy paste these values inside your Xcode. These are some of the assets that I have used. I'm going to post their link in the description box. The graph assets I have created myself using GIMP. So I'm going to show you the screen in which I'm going to show you what actually the answer image is. This is the answer image inside a row. This is the answer text, which is Spanish in our first row. And there is an answer subtext that is added in some of the questionnaire views. So here I pasted all of the data. Now I'm going to format this data so that we will be able to proceed further. So you can pause the video here, copy all of this data, which will help us to build the further screens of onboarding questionnaire. So next I'm going to add the final view, which is the onboarding questionnaire view. It is the main view that we are going to create inside this part of the series. So first we are going to create a variable with the name of progress and given it a smaller value because the first question will have some progress. Then there is a private index which is set to 0. This corresponds to the index of the question that we are accessing from the data. And then I have created a variable selected entry, which is going to basically set all of the values of the answers to false inside another array of the same size. So basically it is going to correspond to each of the entry inside your data.questions at a certain index, and this is set to false. And whenever we are going to click a certain entry, it is going to be set to true. Then I'm copying some of the code from the onboarding view, which is basically this environment variable, which is going to move us to the back screen. I've already shown you the code in the previous video. You can just copy paste the code and see how it works. Here we are adding a navigation view. Inside the navigation view, there will be a VStack for sure. I'm going to add alignment to it later. Then there is an 8 stack. The 8 stack will contain a button which is a back button. I'm going to copy the code of the back button from onboarding view. And next there will be a progress view on the right hand side of this button, which is going to display that how many questions have already been asked from the user. So there is a Z stack which will contain rectangle views, two rectangle views. One is the unfilled rectangle and another one is the rectangle which is filled of color green. So follow all of these steps and create the progress view. And after that, we are going to move to another H stack view below this H stack. The fill of the top rectangle will be according to the progress. So I've multiplied it by 300 and converted it into CG float. Now you have seen that the fill is in the center. So first let's make it circular. We are going to make the edges of the top rectangle also with the corner radius 10 and the outside rectangle with the 10. And then I'm going to do the alignment, which is basically dot leading, to move the fill towards the start of this rectangle. So now the top view is completed. After that, let's add another 8 stack, which will contain a Duolingo image along with a speech bubble that we have created in our previous video. I've shown you that is created in onboarding view. So I'm going to use that to display the query inside each of the question. So let's create a Z stack, which will contain a speech bubble, and the top of it will contain the text. So I'm setting here the values of the speech bubble. So next I'm going to adjust its UI by setting the foreground and background color and the fill, and then a frame width and height with some padding. You have seen here that the triangle which is pointing towards the duo is not shown here. So I'm going to edit some of the code inside the speech bubble in onboarding view. I'm going to show you that in a while. So let's add the text here on the top of this speech bubble, which is basically corresponds to the first question. Since the index is 0 in our case, we are setting the font, the foreground color, and then we are going to add some of the padding here. So this is how it's going to look like on the top of the screen. The Duo image is different from the image that is used inside the app, but since we have no access to its asset, so I have chosen a random image in place of that image. So here I'm updating the function path inside the speech bubble struct in the onboarding view. So copy all of these steps and edit it so that the triangle is shown towards the Duo inside the onboarding questionnaire view. The next thing is basically for the index 0, we need to add a title which is basically for English speakers. So let's add the title here and the all of the properties of this text. And then we are going to align it towards the left of the screen. So we have made the text bold and set its background color to black. And now some padding. So here I've added the alignment. This will make all of the elements inside the V stack to align towards the left of the screen. So next I'm going to create a selection card view. So this is basically one of the entry inside our scroll view, and we are going to pass the values from the main view to this view to create this selection card view. So let's add all of the relevant variables on the top of the selection card view. Selected entry is basically tells us whether any of the option is selected or not from the list of options. And selected index is basically the entry point of the that option. For example, if 0 corresponds to the first row, 1 corresponds to the second row. So that is the selected index. Then there is a Z stack which will contain an H stack. H stack is basically it will contain answer image, answer text, or answer text or answer subtext according to the 4 screens which has different kind of options. So I've handled all of these things inside this H stack. So copy all of these steps and add the relevant properties to make the UI correspond to the UI of the actual Duolingo app. So if there is no image, we are going to add a little space with a spacer and a frame width I've set to 20. So basically add a little space in the start and then add the answer text according to the selected index. I am removing here the binding macro so that we can pass them static values and see how the UI look likes in the preview. So here I'm adding data.question. I picked the first question and here I'm adding some of the values inside the preview to view how the UI looks like. So this is the first UI, which is a flag, which is a Spanish flag, and then a text which is Spanish. So I'm adding here a spacer and then I'm going to add here the answer subtext values. And then I'm going to show you here for the different indices how it's going to look like. So here I've added the answer subtext and removed some of the values, added here the font and the foreground color, and adjusted the font size and made it bold. I am adding here the alignment and some padding from the trailing. So here the first option, and for 2 and for 3 index we need to have 2 values for a text and subtext. But since subtext is not appearing, so I'm going to fix some of the issues here. So first I have updated the name of the selection card, and here I need to basically convert image into text. So this is the issue on line number 35. I fixed it. So this is how it's going to look like. You cannot see the boundary because the background is white. I'm going to draw a rounded rectangle on the top of it. So here I'm adding all of the properties of the rounded rectangle which will be drawn on the top of it. And when we are going to select it, it is going to be highlighted with a specific color. In the actual app, it is highlighted in blue color, but here I'm going to display it as green. So here I'm adding a frame width and height to each of this cell or a selection card view. So you have seen here the view is crashed. Why this view crashed? Think about it. So this is basically due to the reason that we are using the selected entry selection index, and since there is nothing inside the array, so it is bound to crash. So here I've removed the preview so that the issue of crash will be fixed and we can move on to the adding this selection card view to our main onboarding questionnaire view. So this is here I've added the disabled property, which means that it is going to be disabled when it's not clicked. So this is I've added here the binding macro back to the relevant variables, question, and selected entry, which will be passed from the main view. Here I am adding a button, which is basically the button that is going to be on the top of the Z stack. When we are going to click it, it is going to mark the certain entry inside the selected entry as true, so that we can check in our main view which of the entry is being selected. And rest, I'm going to set all of the rest of the properties and of selected entry as false, because we need to select only one option when clicked. This is going to help us to enable and disable our continue button in each of the onboarding questionnaire view screen. So here I'm creating another file which is onboarding view model. So basically there was a little issue. We cannot use the data directly since it's static. It is not being updated and the view is not being updated according to what I required from this onboarding questionnaire view. So I have created an onboarding view model which is very close to the real case scenario. In this view model, we are going to fetch the data from the server if you have this data on a server. So here I have created just an init method and another method to get a question from a certain index. And then I'm going to use its object to access this published variable question to get the question at a relevant index. In normal app flow, in production, you are going to fetch the question from your server and then you are going to pass a certain question to the user. So this is how the view is being presented to the user. On the right hand side, you can look into the preview. Now let's add the scroll view here. It is going to have a lazy V stack. It is a good practice to add a lazy V stack if we have a lot of entries, like in the first case where we are printing the languages. I have not considered all of the languages, only a few ones, and I'm going to also show you the learning or lesson screens for only few of the languages, not all, because there will be a lot of data that is saved for each of the language on the server in the case of Duolingo. So here I'm iterating over the view model.question.answer text, because answer text is the entity that is present in all of the options, in all of the questions basically. So let's add the relevant parameters here. So here you are able to see on the right hand side that we are able to see some of the options, but they are not aligned properly. So I am going to dig into it why this is occurring. So I am going to move to selection card view, and here I'm folding this, and here you can see the issue. The rounded rectangle should not be a part of its stack, but it should be on the top of these values in the Z stack. So I've copied it there, and on the right hand side you can see that the view is now aligned properly. Next, we are going to create a continue button at the bottom of this scroll view. And first, we are going to create its UI, and then we are going to add the code for the on-click event action here. So let's add the UI of the button here, continue, which is going to be green color when enabled. Otherwise, it is going to be of gray color. If no option is selected, it is going to be disabled. So let's add the UI properties here. So here I'm adding the padding. So you can see here that the button is visible. The background is set to green. Next, we are going to add here a property to hide the back, but the actual navigation bar back button. So let's set it hidden as true. Next, we are going to add a function to our var body sum view, which is going to check that should we enable the continue button or keep it disabled, which depends on if the user has selected any option or not. So here I'm going to show you the body of this function, and we are going to call it on the disabling of this button continue and to select the background of this button. So first we are going to iterate over the selected entry and see if any of the entries is set to true, which is in the case if any of the options is selected. Then we are going to return immediately from this function, otherwise we are going to return false. So here I'm calling this function to set the UI according to our needs. Next, I'm going to add the logic here that how we are going to basically move to the next question whenever the continue button is clicked. So if the index is less than 5, I haven't checked the value. I think it should be less than 5, but let's see. So here we are incrementing the index, which means that we are going to get the next question at that index. And we are going to reset some of the variables so that the selected values and selected entries should be then continue with the next question. So here I'm resetting some of the values. I've set the selected entry as an empty array, and then I'm going to set all of the values to false for the next options. Here I'm setting it as index. So this is for the rest of the options, and here I'm updating the progress according to each of the question. The progress is not being animated. In fact, a lot of the duo animations are not there. I am not working on the animations in this tutorial for now, but maybe towards the end I may add some of the animations to show you how we are going to add it. So this is for the clicking of the button. When you are going to play the code, there is going to be a crash. This is due to the reason that the scroll view is not updated instantaneously with each of the question and the previous value persists. And it is going to try to update the previous values which are not there. So a lot of problems can occur. For that, I'm going to add a simple check inside the selection card view. It is going to fix these errors. Now I'm going to move to each of the screen inside the preview. You can select different options, and in here it is going to crash. It means that the index value is set to a wrong value. So I've set it to 3. So now it's not being crashed and we are not going to move ahead. So the 4 screens are covered up till this point. Now I'm going to play this code inside the simulator and see that if the screens are properly connected or not. So you have previously seen that we have created the onboarding view and a getting started screen. So the continue is not working because we have not linked it with the onboarding questionnaire view. So I'm going to update the onboarding view to handle this questionnaire view. It is going to contain an if else. So if it is set to true, then we are going to check that we need to display the first view or the second view. Otherwise we are going to move to the next view. So here an if else is going to be added. So if the first view is not presented, which means that we are on the second view, then we can move to our navigation link, which is going to push the onboarding questionnaire view on the top of our stack. Otherwise, we are simply going to display the button which is going to move between the two views. And then we are going to test the code. So it's working in the preview. Let's see if it works in the simulator, and it's working. So this is all for this part in the series. I hope you have learned something from it. We are going to add the further screens of onboarding inside this view, and then we are going to move to the lesson screens. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, like and share this video, and do comment if there is any question or you want basically anything to change in the future lessons of Duolingo app. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.